I have never met a man so ignorant that I couldn't learn something from him. I do not feel obliged to believe that the same God who has endowed us with sense, reason, and intellect has intended us to forego their use.
You cannot teach a man anything, you can only help him find it within himself.
In questions of science, the authority of 1,000 is not worth the humble reasoning of a single individual.
All truths are easy to understand once they are discovered. The point is to discover them.
Passion is the genesis of genius.
The sun, with all those planets revolving around it and dependent on it, can still ripen a bunch of grapes as if it had nothing else in the universe to do.
For in the sciences the authority of thousands of opinions is not worth as much as one tiny spark of reason in an individual man. Besides, the modern observations deprive all former writers of any authority, since if they had seen what we see, they would have judged as we judge.
It is a beautiful and delightful sight to behold the body of the moon.
Wine is sunlight, held together by water.
There are those who reason well, but they are greatly outnumbered by those who reason badly.
Long experience has taught me this about the status of mankind with regard to matters requiring thought: the less people know and understand about them, the more positively they attempt to argue concerning them, while on the other hand to know and understand a multitude of things renders men cautious in passing judgment upon anything new.
Measure what can be measured, and make measurable what cannot be measured.
Mathematics is the language in which God has written the universe.
My dear Kepler, what would you say of the learned here, who, replete with the pertinacity of the ASP, have steadfastly refused to cast a glance through the telescope? What shall we make of this? Shall we laugh, or shall we cry?
It is surely harmful to souls to make it a heresy to believe what is proved.
By denying scientific principles, one may maintain any paradox.
With regard to matters requiring thought, the less people know and understand about them, the more positively they attempt to argue concerning them.
See now the power of truth. The same experiment which at first glance seemed to show one thing, when more carefully examined, assures us of the contrary.
Names and attributes must be accommodated to the essence of things, and not the essence to the names, since things come first and names afterwards.
in the sciences, the authority of thousands of opinions is not worth as much as one tiny spark of reason in an individual man.
I've loved the stars too fondly to be fearful of the night.
Philosophy is written in that great book whichever lies before our eyes, I mean the universe, but we cannot understand it if we do not first learn the language and grasp the symbols in which it is written. We cannot teach people anything, we can only help them discover it within themselves.
They seem to forget that the increase of known truths stimulates the investigation, establishment, and growth of the arts, not their diminution or destruction.
The sun, with all the planets revolving around it, and depending on it, can still ripen a bunch of grapes as though it had nothing else in the universe to do.
Measure what is measurable, and make measurable what is not so.
In time you may discover everything that can be discovered, and still your progress will only be progress away from humanity. The distance between you and them can one day become so great that your joyous cry over some new gain could be answered by an universal shriek of horror.
The increase of known truths stimulates the investigation, establishment, and growth of the arts.
And, believe me, if I were again beginning my studies, I should follow the advice of Plato and start with mathematics.
Who indeed will set bounds to human ingenuity? Who will assert that everything in the universe capable of being perceived is already discovered and known?
I think that in the discussion of natural problems we ought to begin not with the scriptures, but with experiments and demonstrations.
To our natural and human reason, I say that these terms large, small, immense, minute, etc. are not absolute but relative. The same thing in comparison with various others may be called at one time immense and at another imperceptible.
In the future, there will be opened a gateway and a road to a large and excellent science into which minds more piercing than mine shall penetrate to recesses still deeper.
Surely it is a great thing to increase the numerous host of fixed stars previously visible to the unaided vision, adding countless more which have never before been seen, exposing these plainly to the eye in numbers 10 times exceeding the old and familiar stars.
To me, a great ineptitude exists on the part of those who would have it that God made the universe more in proportion to the small capacity of their reason than to his immense, his infinite, power.
The greatness and the glory of God shine forth marvelously in all his works, and is to be read above all in the open book of the heavens.
You cannot teach a man anything, you can only help him find it within himself.
Where the senses fail us, reason must step in.
To apply oneself to great inventions, starting from the smallest beginnings, is no task for ordinary minds. To divine that wonderful arts lie hid behind trivial and childish things is a conception for superhuman talents.
If the earth were not subject to any change, I would consider the earth a big but useless body in universe, paralyzed, superfluous and unnatural. Those who so exalt incorruptibility, unchangeability, and the like, are, I think, reduced to saying such things both because of inordinate desire they have to live for a long time and because of the terror they have of death. They do not realize that if men were immortal, they would have never come into the world.
There is not a single effect in nature, not even the least that exists, such that the most ingenious theorists can ever arrive at a complete understanding of it. This vain presumption of understanding everything can have no other basis than never understanding anything. For anyone who had experienced just once the perfect understanding of one single thing, and had truly tasted how knowledge is attained, would recognize that of the infinity of other truths he understands nothing.
I think that tastes, odors, colors, and so on reside in consciousness. Hence, if the living creature were removed, all these qualities would be wiped away and annihilated.
I see that you have hitherto been one of that herd who, in order to learn how matters such as this take place, and in order to acquire a knowledge of natural effects, do not exhaust themselves in waking and studying, and mortify themselves with experiments and observations, but retire into their studies and glance through an index and a table of contents to see whether Aristotle has said anything about them, and, being assured of the true sense of his text, consider that nothing else can be known.
The fear of infinity is a form of myopia that destroys the possibility of seeing the actual infinite, even though it in its highest form has created and sustains us. My dear Kepler, I wish that we might laugh at the stupidity of the human herd. What do you have to say about the principal philosophers of this academy who are filled with the stubbornness of an ASP and do not want to look at either the planets, the moon, or the telescope, even though I have freely and deliberately offered them the opportunity 1,000 times? Truly, just as the ASP stops its ears, so do these philosophers shut their eyes to the light of truth.
Who would set a limit to the mind? Who would dare assert that we know all there is to be known?
Enthusiastic people experience life from the inside out.
All inconveniences will be removed as you propound them. Up to this point, only the first and most general reasons have been mentioned which render it not entirely improbable that the daily rotation belongs to the Earth rather than to the rest of the universe.
I do not feel obliged to believe that the same God who has endowed us with senses, reason, and intellect has intended us to forego their use and by some other means to give us knowledge which we can attain by them.
But surpassing all stupendous inventions, what sublimity of mind was his who dreamed of finding means to communicate his deepest thoughts to any other person, though distant by mighty intervals of place and time. Of talking with those who are in India, of speaking to those who are not yet born and will not be born for 1,000 or 10,000 years, and with what facility, by the different arrangements of 20 characters upon a page.
I've grown too fond of the stars to be fearful of the night.
I entertain no doubts as to the truth of the transfinites, which I have recognized with God's help.